Hi, I'm going to talk to you about integrating direct quotes into your research writing. Integrating source material into your sentences is key to synthesizing others' ideas and information with your own. Evidence drawn from sources should back up your conclusions, not be your conclusions. You don't want to let your evidence overwhelm your own point of view. To keep your ideas in the forefront, you do more than merely present borrowed material. You introduce and interpret it as well. So when you are formulating a paragraph in academic writing, you should have a topic sentence that addresses whatever topic you're addressing in a paragraph. You should have some comments about that. If you use a direct quote in it, you need to put it somewhere in the middle. You shouldn't really introduce paragraphs or end paragraphs with direct quotes because then you're letting somebody else speak for you. You should be using direct quotes only for evidence for the point that you're making in your paragraph. So I'm going to show you some specifics for this. Introducing borrowed material. Always introduce a summary, a paraphrase, or a quotation by identifying it and providing a smooth transition between your words and ideas and those of your source. In the following passage, the writer has not meshed the structures of her own and her source's sentences. One editor disagrees with this view, and a good reporter does not fail to separate opinions from facts. In the revision below, the writer adds words to integrate the quotation into her sentence. One editor disagrees with this view, maintaining that a good reporter does not fail to separate opinions from facts. Now, there's a few things that I want to point out here. This quote is introduced, and there's a good verb that introduces it. There's quote marks around the direct quotation. So notice that the quote marks start here and end here before the citation. The citation goes in the parentheses. This, of course, is the author's last name, Lyman, and 52 is the page number. The period goes on the outside here. So it's similar in APA, but definitely the structure is the same in APA. There's just one or two minor differences, but the citation is not part of the quote, so the quote ends here, and the quote marks don't go on the outside. Notice that there's no comma here, and there's no P or PG or page in MLA. It's just a space. So that's really important to get right at this point. It's important that you follow the documentation style that you're meant to be using at the time. It actually is kind of rude not to follow the guidelines for the particular documentation style that you're meant to be using. It's like tramping through somebody's house in muddy boots. So if you're asked to use MLA, Modern Language Association documentation style, then use it to your best ability. If you're asked to use APA style, which is the American Psychological Association style, then use it. There are also other documentation styles that you'll run across. It varies by the academic field. Lots of major academic fields have their own documentation styles, and it is important that you follow whichever one you're going to be asked to use. Okay, here's some more important things. To mesh your own and your source's words, you may sometimes need to make a substitution or addition to the quotation, signaling your change with brackets. And you might do this because you need to change the tense from past to present or present to past and so on. Adding words. The tabloids of England are a journalistic case study in bad reporting, claims Lyman. Now here we have the addition of England. These are extra words that have been inserted here. They go in brackets, and anybody who knows MLA style knows that words in bracket means that you added something for clarity. Now, comma, claims Lyman. This is a signal phrase. A signal phrase signals that a quotation. Just like in dialogue, you'll see Harry said, comma, quote mark, I am hungry, period, end quotes. So that's a signal phrase. It's signaling that there's a quote, and usually uses an active verb like claims. This is the author's last name. It's part of the signal phrase here, and so it's not, the name isn't included inside the parentheses. Now, you should have some kind of page number or paragraph number for every single citation. Even if it's an electronic source or a website, use a paragraph number. They're not all going to be marked, but just count them up yourself. That way, when somebody looks up the source that you're using, he or she will know exactly where to look. You should direct your reader to that original source as closely as possible. This is the verb form has been changed to present tense. Capitals have been added, but you know what I normally do is, instead of going to this trouble, I would just maybe put in my own to and then start the quote marks here so that you don't gum up the works too much. And here the name is again in the parentheses because it's not part of the signal phrase here. It's just saying where the source came from. One of the things that confuses students is if you're using a source that is either from some kind of website that represents an organization like a government organization or an advocacy organization like a .org, or sometimes newspaper articles don't have author names, then what do? Well, what you do is instead of using the author name in the citation, you list it by whatever is in your works cited page, which we will go over in a separate podcast. But whatever it's listed by on the works cited page is what you put here. Sometimes it'll be an organization, and sometimes it will be the name of the article because that's the way that you are inserting it, and that's what will go in the citation here. Okay, some other things that I wanted to point out is signal phrases. The words "one editor grants and he insists" in the preceding revised passage are signal phrases. They tell readers who the source is and what to expect in the quotations that follow. Signal phrases usually contain the source author's name or a substitute for it, such as "one editor" and "he," and 2, a verb that indicates the source author's attitude or approach to what he or she says. Some verbs for signal phrases appear below. Now, a lot of students get bogged down in about verbs in the signal phrases. They just use shows, this shows, or the author said. But look at all of these wonderful verbs that you can use for signal phrases: comments, describes, explains, illustrates, assesses, concludes, considers, claims, agrees, complains, condemns, etc. There's so many wonderful ones that you can use here. Now, I'm going to actually go back over here because I don't want you to get confused about something. Sometimes students just automatically leave in a comma here, but it's not an automatic thing. This comma is announcing a signal phrase. The signal phrase could also come before. Lyman claims, comma. But you wouldn't automatically leave it in there. So it's only because the signal phrase is at the end. If it were at the beginning, then this would just be nothing and the period out there. So don't get confused by that. Here are some more examples. Lyman insists that. Now, using the word "that" here means that it's not a signal phrase exactly. If you look here, it says, however, Lyman insists a good reporter does not fail to separate opinions from facts. The signal phrase is in the middle and is set off by commas on either side. That's our comma rule, non-essential element here. It could be taken out and not change the meaning. If this wasn't here and it said, Lyman insists, this is the signal phrase, and the comma goes there because it's standing in for the word "that." So when you're thinking about signal phrases, always think of the word "that" in your head. Lyman insists that. Sentence structure is interesting here because this is the subject and verb. This is a complex sentence structure. This is the subject, this is the verb, and then this is a subordinating conjunction that's announcing another clause here. So that's why the word "that" is there. But we've reduced it down to just a comma, which is okay. The comma stands in for the word "that." Okay. Another principle I want you guys to get from this is learn how to integrate direct quotes into your own sentences so that you have these signal phrases. Don't just dump them in there whole. You need to integrate quotes into your own sentences. That's very important. Let's see, what else do I want to say about this? Oh yeah, discipline styles for integrating sources. In English and other humanities, we use MLA style. History and other humanities also might use it, but in English, when you're talking about literature and that kind of thing, like Kate Chopin builds irony into every turn of the story of an hour, this is present tense here. She loves, she anticipates. But that's really only when you're analyzing literature. The kind of papers that you guys are probably writing has something to do with sociology or current events or some kind of social science or health science, that kind of thing. Those papers tend to be in past tense. So writing all the way through in present tense is not easy. It's quite difficult, so I just recommend that you write in past tense and don't worry about it too much. Let's see, what else? Also, sentence structures are really important. This says Harold Lyman grants that. For some reason, this really confuses students when you're asked to put in information about the source. It's the author's name, a mention here of the source that is being used. But notice here, this is a separate element in his book, The Conscience of the Journalist. This is a prepositional phrase. It could go in the beginning. In his book, The Conscience of a Journalist, Harold Lyman grants that. Don't let this confuse you. Make sure that you have, this is the subject, this is the verb. This is just an extra thing, and make sure that your sentence structure is right when you're integrating quotes. But notice here is the page number at the end. You can use paragraph numbers if you need to. And I've given you some separate instruction on how to format those. Okay, if you have any questions, always ask.